Hello and welcome to Get Rich Slow, the podcast that challenges the conventional get-rich-quick ideology and instead explores what authentic success really means and how you can achieve it. I'm Hannah Martin, the founder of Talented Ladies Club, and today I am joined by author, journalist and podcaster Jamie Bartlett for an episode on online scams. So hi Jamie.
Hello, how you doing?
Hello. It seems pretty bizarre because I've listened to your podcast series, the Missing Cryptoqueen, so it seems really bizarre to be interviewing you for mine. But to get started, before we delve into this, can I ask you what success means to you? I ask everyone this.
I still, at the ripe old age of early 40s, don't really know. I'm still trying to figure it out for myself. There's a load of cliche things about, doing things that make you happy and, making sure. But to me, I guess I'm just constantly. I guess the thing that I enjoy the most is when I get messages from ordinary people that have really liked what I've done and have said something along the lines of, I understand this thing now, or this technology I never really got that confused me. I think I get it. That to me is the best. I mean, that's the best thing. That's always the best feedback I ever get. And also, as long as I can do that and still pay the mortgage, then it's a success.
Happy days. So basically, having an impact, having a positive impact.
Yeah, but it's a specific type of impact because the whole all the work I've done on writing about technology for whatever it's been 10, 15 years now has been predicated on a simple idea, which is it's taking over the world, it's changing all of our lives, and a tiny number of people understand it really well. And in any society, when a small number of people understand the technology that drives society and the economy, they're going to use it to their advantage and play on the rest of our ignorance. So having an impact, but specifically that impact, getting ordinary people interested in how the darknet works. Why should I understand what my 13-year-old daughter is doing online and how can I figure it out better? How can I spot a pyramid scheme dressed up as an exciting new cryptocurrency? So that's my target audience. The person that thinks they hate tech, doesn't care about it, says, I switch off when I hear about Bitcoin, I don't understand it. That's my impact, those people, because otherwise I'm spreading myself too thin. If I'm trying to change what the government's doing and I'm trying to change what I'm not going to achieve anything. So I try and keep it focused on that idea.
Excellent. And that leads me very nicely to my first question. Obviously, you've had a long career. You've published books. You've written articles. You've done a podcast. And it's very much, I think there's a common theme there about the internet and technology and social media and latterly and its influence on society. So what is it that initially created that interest? Why are you driven to have this niche?
Well, it started off a bit bizarrely, actually. I'm trained as an old-fashioned researcher. I have a master's degree in research methodology, and I worked at a research think tank, and it was designing questionnaires and analysing, data that would come back, or seminars and workshop design and stuff like that. And then in 2010. I was watching the English Defence League. Remember those guys going up and down the country doing their demonstrations in the streets about what they called the Islamification of Britain. But to me, that was a small part of the story because all the activity I saw was on Facebook. There was thousands and thousands of them on Facebook organising, recruiting, promoting, propaganding. And I thought, no one's really studying that side of things. And I actually designed a little online Facebook ad targeted at EDL supporters on Facebook. And rather than when they clicked on it, rather than trying to sell them jeans or my book or anything, I directed them to an online questionnaire about their attitudes and beliefs and views and aspirations and so on. And I put £100 budget into it. And I came back on the Monday thinking no one would have answered. And I had 1,000 responses from EDL supporters. And I was blown away. Because none of the big polling companies had been able to get any of them to talk. And I really figured out that this social media is a not only is it changing society, but it's changing research and how you understand society. And from that point onwards, I just became obsessed with how do you research what's going on online? How do you collect the data? How do you figure it? How do you get into these weird online subcultures and interview people online? And there's so much information out there that I just wanted to come up with ways of making sense of it in a way that ordinary people would sort of relate to and be interested in. And you know what it's like? You kind of get pigeonholed. I did a few things like that. And then that's what I do, because that's what everyone wants me to do.
And well, I guess, and over time you become an expert on it because you have this body of work behind you and a knowledge that's acquired. So you're by default an expert. So how do you think, thinking about this, is how do you think that our use of the internet and social media has it changed over the years? Has it changed? If you think back, going over maybe 15 years as social media matures, are we using it differently today, or are we using it in the same way, but we have different abilities to use it, platforms and...
Well, I suppose the most obvious way is that if you think 15 years ago, it was seen by most people naively as a fun alternative to the world where the power systems and structures and military and business and politicians weren't really there. It was for us, the people, to use, and it was a free space. On the internet, no one knows you're a dog, went the famous New Yorker magazine. A place to reinvent yourself, a place where you could be free. Incredibly naive. And the big change over the last 10 years is that everyone, all the powerful people, the businesses, the politicians, the sophisticated psychological operations teams at military departments, have realised this is where we live our lives. So they need to get on there and start trying to control it and manipulate it and turn it to their advantage too. And you see it in elections, you see it in advertising, and we are bombarded constantly with this sort of avalanche of information that we don't know whether we can trust it or not. We don't know who's really behind it. We don't know how sophisticated the algorithms that are targeting us really are, and how well do they understand us. Like this happens to me a lot. I don't know. Have you noticed how much better Spotify's algorithms have got lately? Like the music they throw up recommended to you is just getting more and more like they literally, I feel like they know my own music taste better than I do. and every now and again they'll promote something awful, like music I hate, like the Lighthouse Family or M People, and then I'm really like offended by it. And then but then I sort of think, well, maybe actually secretly I do really like that, and the algorithm knows me, and so it's sort of, why am I lying about it to myself?
And is it kind of like a test?
I feel. Yeah, I see. Yeah, but is he gonna carry on listening, collect more data about him? But to me, that's just an anecdote of what's going on here. That the power and the speed and the improvement in the technologies that are there to understand us and predict what we do and what we think and what we'll buy and who we'll date and where we'll go on holiday are getting better so quickly that it's going to spark a sort of crisis of confidence in us about whether or not we will sort of defer judgment to these algorithms that seem to know us better than we know ourselves. And that has been the story of the last 10 to 15 years. And we're really just in the middle of it. And we were very naive 10 to 15 years ago. I was writing research papers saying the internet is going to finally democratize society, make it freer and fairer, and all of these things. And when I look back and read them, I realise quite how naive I probably was.
But I think that there is to what you talked about just now about how data evolves and becomes more sophisticated. And there is a plus side to that. I mean, I do some work with a programmatic agency, and they can target ads that they will know exactly you're on a buying cycle. They know what you've bought. So you can see ads that are perfectly tailored to what it is that you actually need. And this Spotify example by apart from M People and Lighthouse Family, finding a music that you maybe hadn't discovered and would like. But there's always got to be that policing, because there is a dark side to that. Which is where...
Exactly. That stuff's good. That stuff can be really beneficial. I think the naivety was that would be its use. It wouldn't also be used by people pushing political narratives on you or pushing information on you that would try and sway your opinion about your government or another government, or wouldn't try and, in the case of eating disorders, wouldn't be able to push you towards really negative behaviours as well. So it's the good stuff, the useful stuff that's being used by everyone, for nefarious purposes as well, that I think we were probably a bit naive about. Like, every technology turns up and we think, fantastic, all the good guys are going to use, it's going to be brilliant. And we're naive about how the other guys are going to use it too, exactly the same technology.
I guess it's a bit like money. In and of itself, it's benign, but you can take money and use it for positive things, and you can take money and use it for negative things. But money itself is like, it's not good or bad. It's the person using it and their aims.
But it shapes. It's true, yeah. But I think technology can also sometimes shape society in ways that can be slightly negative. I mean, if you think that the concentration of data invariably, because of network effects, becomes more and more concentrated in the hands of a small number of companies because they have more data, so they offer better services, so they get more users, so they can collect more data, so they offer more. And it just, in a big cycle, you suddenly end up in a position where just a handful of big companies control so much of how the information we receive is given to us, that I think the nature of data and technology lends itself to that centralization of power. That is a function of how the technology works. So to me, it's not quite right that it's sort of neutral and it's just about the uses of it. It's that sometimes types of technology lend themselves to more centralized systems or decentralized ones, or can help already powerful people, or can help marginalized people and whatever. And I feel, unfortunately, and not through anyone's intentional design, the current way technology is set up and is being used lends itself to more and more sort of centralized control. People thought that China would never be able to control the internet because it's so inherently democratic. Again, not wrong. It allows the Chinese government to be able to collect all this information about everyone in a central place and control people in a way that you'd have thought was unimaginable 20 years ago. And I see that as a product of turning the world into pieces of data that you can then have a small number of people controlling.
Like evil puppet masters.
Yeah, exactly. And even the good ones, it's worrying, because what happens if the good puppet masters turn bad one day?
Oh yeah, and also even someone good might still have an agenda that's at odds with the greater good. Talking about evil puppet masters and using the technology for bad, you had a hit podcast, Missing Cryptoqueen, and this was focused on the story of OneCoin, which was essentially a crypto MLM. What role do you think social media and the internet played in the recruitment of people, the manipulation of people that enabled that scam, as it was, to flourish?
Well, it's interesting. It's really cool talking to you about this, because the podcast is called The Missing Cryptoqueen, and she claimed that this was a great new cryptocurrency like Bitcoin. It's going to change the world. It's going to go up in value. But in truth, it really was an MLM scam. It was just the MLM logic, the MLM marketing, the MLM sales techniques, the MLM commission and comp plan. But the product was a fake cryptocurrency. And it's funny because when I speak to the crypto people, they kind of object to it being called a crypto scam, because they're like, it's an MLM scam, but it just uses crypto branding. And it's true. That's a fair comment. It really is a classic. Like, you'll recognize this product, and understand this more than the crypto people will in many ways, because it's sort of your world. But the internet, I suppose it was like a lot of MLM scams, and even the legitimate MLM companies, so much of the promotion is about creating the impression of success. You know, don't tell people about your wealth, show them. Post pictures of your Lamborghini, don't tell them you've bought one. And of course, the top promoters in OneCoin were not cryptographic techie, guys. They were selling coffee the month before. They were selling vitamins the year before. So they just used the same techniques as MLM as they had done in their previous MLM ventures. So it was all posting social media pictures of their incredible life. Here I am in Dubai. Here I am in Thailand. Here's 3,000 screaming fans, and here's my massive house. And that was obviously central to the success of the company. OneCoin didn't go onto Facebook and directly advertise through Facebook its products. It was just using the same old techniques of letting everyone else do the selling for them further down the line. So everyone had their own techniques. In Finland, Facebook groups were crucial. You know, the Finnish promoters of OneCoin set up a lot of online pages very quickly, you know, talking about the coin, showing Dr. Ruja Ignatova as being this crypto genius. But in Uganda, it was mouth to mouth, it was through the church, it was family members just talking to each other on the streets and selling it, and sometimes literally door-to-door selling. So it really varied. That's the genius of MLM. It morphs to suit whatever circumstances are best going to work for it. So it was a really fascinating hybrid, really, of online and offline recruitment, I suppose.
It's really interesting.
Is that in line with?
Yeah, absolutely. And what's really interesting is I obviously have researched MLMs for a few years now, and one of the things I look at in the UK, we're able to look at company accounts because they're published on Companies House, so you can sort of see the turnover and the growth of them. And what's really interesting to track, not just for the MLM companies, but a lot of the top representatives of those companies have limited companies themselves because they turn over enough money to warrant it. And they all sort of had the golden years, about 2015, 2016, started to dip 2017, 2018. And I think what's interesting, if you look at, tracking social media and, the years kind of leading on, or people were kind of getting, mass kind of people going on to things like Facebook and starting to use social media. But at that time, being quite naive and taking things at face value. So when someone says, message you going, "Hi, hon, haven't seen you for like 20 years, fancy a coffee," or "Here's a picture of me in my Range Rover casually just drinking coffee. Whoops, I've got the logo of my Range Rover in the background, or my handbag." And I think that there was a naivety there. But since then it's really dropped, because I think people become aware of it now. We're much more savvy about social. We're aware that people lie on it and deceive. Whereas I think until that point we were probably quite naive. But I think absolutely MLMs, exactly what you're talking about is right. It's the showcasing or show-offing of often a fabricated wealthy lifestyle, and that's what makes other people think what they've got.
Totally. I know over in Uganda, for example, there were promoters that were basically given cars to drive around in. So when they knocked door to door, and they target the farmers just after the harvest, when they had the most money, but they were given cars and nice phones. They weren't theirs, but they turned up looking, nice clothes, looking really successful. And it was all just part of the marketing ploy. There was the other side of social media as well, which is OneCoin went from basically zero sales in August 2014 to 1 million people in the space of something like 18 months. And so much of that was that people would just get online and message their cousin in Pakistan, or their uncle in Japan, or their brother-in-law in Latin America, and they would send them all and they could all sign up just at home on their laptops, go straight to the company, join, get under my downline, and people have said, like, how did this company go from Bulgaria to a tiny village 400 miles to the west of Kampala in Uganda in like 3 months? It had already got there. And it's because social media just allowed recruiters to just have this huge market very quickly accessible. And it would often be through friends and family, but you know how it goes, it explodes immediately. And 6 weeks later, it's in like almost every country on earth. So the speed with which it could grow compared to something like Amway in the 60s and 70s, when it really is like door to door, and it does still grow very quickly, but it's nothing like the 18 months that it took OneCoin to become a unicorn, which is really important because the regulators took them about 4 years to figure out what was going on, by which time that 4 billion euros had been invested. It's just not, it's too slow with modern pyramid schemes. You just can't wait 4 years before saying this is a risky investment. It's too late.
It is. There's such an issue with regulators being aware of and learning about, and then creating the laws to kind of, as you say, they morph, these companies morph all the time, and these regulators are always in the back foot trying to kind of identify the scam. When you uncovered the story with the Missing Cryptoqueen, obviously having been aware of kind of how people use social media on the internet, did anything really surprise you that you weren't expecting to discover?
Sorry, can I pause you 1 second? Just because someone's knocking on my door. Hello? Oh, yeah, could you leave that behind the bin? Is that all right? Cheers, mate. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
You can leave that in if you want. That's real life. That is our modern, like, especially post-pandemic. Yeah. It's like a door knock every hour. Like, can you put the bin behind the bin, please?
It can't be as bad. I was recording one where there's some people out on the street were just swearing outside the window, and I thought, I've got to cut that. I'll leave that in.
You could leave that. Yeah, that's how it goes. Sorry, you were asking if there's anything that surprised me about it?
About the OneCoin story, when you know, obviously with your knowledge of kind of things, how the internet works, social media.
I mean, there's so many things, but so many things about the story surprised me. But the two that I think are probably most relevant and useful to think about, the first is, I couldn't believe I'd never heard of this company when I first saw the story. No one really covered it. And I think the reason could be that I'd been writing about Bitcoin since 2013. I'd been writing about cryptocurrencies for ages. And when I first heard about a multi-billion-dollar crypto company in 2018, OneCoin, I was like, how have I not seen this? I know all the big companies. And then I realised, well, because it's an MLM company. And then when I started looking at the size of the MLM industry, and maybe that was my naivety, the size of it, I just couldn't believe the number of people that were turning up to these events. 10,000 people in an arena in Bangkok. I couldn't believe going to, like I've said it a few times now, but tiny villages in Uganda where everyone knew about OneCoin. And I was like, I hadn't even heard about this. And I realised it's like a parallel universe, the MLM industry, that most mainstream journalists don't take seriously enough, or they think it's a bit of I don't know why, or a bit of a joke, or it's a bit silly, or I don't know, because so many people are into it.
Do you think
so many people do it, and it's a part of so many people's lives? But
do you think that's partly because a lot of the victims are they go for the financially vulnerable people? So, you know, like a poor farmer in Uganda would be a classic. So it might be a single mum on benefits in the UK will be a classic thing. They don't need to, if they have enough of those people, they don't need to make much money off these people. They have enough of them. Now, do you think maybe it's because it's lots of people who don't have a voice, who don't have power, who maybe are in the strata of things considered to be least important? That if it was sort of people with more influence, or more social aware, you know, more socially seen, or that they might have more visibility. But it's kind of like,
I think you're right.
Matter less.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're totally right about it. And I think sometimes journalists can be a little bit arrogant, and they're like, well, it's your fault if you've fallen for this, or they don't really know how it works.
Yeah.
You know, and they don't really realise how big it is, how it works.
How sophisticated
they
it
think,
is.
oh my God, you're so silly if you're investing in this.
Yeah, it's like almost like blame the victim. It's like, well, if you're stupid enough to fall for
and you're
that,
greedy. Well, you're greedy. Yeah, you're greedy. Yeah, exactly. So I think there's that, and so it really surprised me. And as I looked into it, I realised that the mainstream press actually thought OneCoin was a cryptocurrency because they didn't really understand it at all. So they thought, oh, it's a bit complicated. The crypto press will cover this. The crypto press looked at it and thought, this is an MLM scam. So that's the mainstream media should be covering that. And it didn't get picked up by anyone. And then I'd go online and see 10,000 people cheering and all putting their money into this. And it's like, why is no journalists really onto this properly yet?
Well,
So I was really surprised at that.
What I will say as well is I've spoken to and helped with research many journalists, and that there are a couple of journalists now who are so determined to try and get a story out, and they can't get people to speak up. Because another thing is, like, the people who have been taken in by this scam often don't want to talk. They're not only they're ashamed, but they are just they don't. A lot of their family don't even know they've lost the money. There is such a sense of, when you've been a victim of something, not wanting to share that victimhood, not wanting to speak about it, not wanting to acknowledge it even. You want to try and kind of pretend it hasn't happened. And what I love about the Missing Cryptoqueen is that you actually went out to Africa and you spoke to these people and gave them a voice and talked about their losses. And you had, the woman from Scotland, I think, was really brave to come on and talk about it. Because I know that when people are victims of an MLM, not only is their own personal shame, especially in the case of, I think, was it Kirsty, where she brought her family in, but also the threat of being bullied by the company and other people in it who don't want the scam to be exposed. So I think it is, to be fair to the media, it's also really hard to get these stories out there.
Yeah, that's true, but a lot of stories are hard to get out. You've got to work on it. You've got to really work hard to get good stories. And I totally agree. But I think there are enough stories out there that we could have done better. We could carry on doing better, getting these MLM stories out there. I think it's probably changed in the last little while. There's been a few good stories, good podcasts, like the Dream and stuff like that
good.
I think have really changed slightly. But I'm talking like 2015, 2016, when OneCoin was at its height. There was just nothing really out there. And you're totally right about the shame. And I think when it's a pyramid scheme, I don't know, obviously the distinction is controversial, but OneCoin's a straight pyramid scheme, an absolute slam dunk pyramid scheme. There is a double shame, because you were warned by your friends not to invest in this, and you swore to them this was a good idea, because a lot of the OneCoin investors were evangelizing to everyone. This is the future of money. This is Bitcoin, and so they're embarrassed for themselves. They're obviously upset about the loss. But because they were pressured to recruit other people that lost their money too, the shame of admitting that you scammed your cousin and your mum and your brother and your best friend is just so awful that people, I think, were often, they continued to pretend to believe in OneCoin because it was more comforting for them than to accept that they had conned their friends and their family. They couldn't admit it. And unfortunately, it meant that the scam was able to go on for longer and fewer people were speaking out about it. And then you also, did also have the pressure from lawyers and other, PR companies that were working for OneCoin that didn't want the negative stories out there. You put all that together, it takes a lot to speak out.
It does. But also,
I get it. I get that.
I always say MLM's like a house of cards. And everyone above you in that house of cards needs everyone underneath. And so they don't want anyone like a virus coming in and talking the truth. So they bully and silence people to keep that house of cards up there. Absolutely.
But the good thing about the Missing Cryptoqueen podcast and story is now that it's become quite well known, some of the shame has sort of gone, and people are actually, the shame's turning to anger. Like, this bloody woman stole all this money off of us. She's still out there. She's got yachts and penthouses, and I want this money back. And I hope that the way we told the story of OneCoin was not to sort of denigrate or embarrass the victims of it. So we've had more and more people coming forward now, and that just creates, it's more normal, and people aren't as embarrassed because they know other people have come forward and were praised for coming forward. So now we actually have lots of investors that really want to talk to us, that they really want to tell their story. Like, I spoke recently to a woman who won the Eurovision Song Contest in 1976 with Israel. She'd invested over $100,000. And it's only then when you realise, when these people start coming forward and telling their stories, it's only then when I really understood how big this thing was. Because even though I'd had leaked documents from the company showing, 3 to 4 billion euros invested, I somehow couldn't get my head around that, because I thought that's too big to go. It's impossible that it's that big. But then when you see, like, you get one phone call from one person in America who knows loads of other people that invested, who alone put in $100,000, you're like, oh man, it really is this big. It really is. So the more people that come forward, the more it helps other people come forward. And I feel like we reached the snowball point where everyone now wants to talk about it because they're being praised for talking about it. So that's been really beneficial.
I think it gives them permission. I think when you think that you've been foolish, and you haven't, you've been conned, but when you feel you've been foolish, and particularly when you feel like your actions have had consequences, and it's a challenging identity of who you think you are. But then when it's seen externally as this scam, and loads of other people have fallen for it as well, then this shame goes. I think some of that shame goes, and you think, well, it's not just me, and your voice is part of a bigger voice, and so you can recognise that it's not my fault.
Totally.
But I think, and there's also, I think this comes with...
There's no point...
So I think with anything like where you've been a victim...
Sorry, please.
So yeah, when I think you've been a victim, you taking ownership and speaking about your experience, I think takes some control back again. I think when you're silent and when you hold it in, you lose control. And I know, experience in my life where I felt, something's happened to me by someone else, and I felt shame that has happened. I allowed it to happen. It was able to happen to me. As soon as I started talking about it and taking ownership of my experience, I felt that I was a survivor rather than a victim, and I took some control back.
Oh, I think that's really well put. Yeah. I mean, I've spoken a lot to many victims, but one in particular called Layla Begum from East London, who she was so ashamed. And she's actually said now, she lost all her money, 20-something thousand, I think it was, that she'd been saving up for a house. But she said she like talking about it has been like a form of therapy, like just to talk about it, to feel like she's taking back some control, but also in the hope that she might be helping someone else. It hasn't all completely gone to waste. I've learned something. I can teach someone. I can make something positive of this. Has been really, really helpful to her.
Definitely. I think that, and when I've spoken to people who've been in MLMs, I would absolutely agree that the interviews we've had have been more like a session of therapy, and often they'll talk about things that it's the first time they've talked about it. And there's a feeling of unburdening an emotion that then lightens them afterwards.
I think the difficulty can be that once the spell is broken and you've realised what I noticed was that people that were inside OneCoin, they were able to find supporting evidence, things they wanted to hear. They could find that everywhere. And then as soon as the spell was broken and they were out, it seemed so obvious to them that the whole thing was a scam. And they almost were seeing the same information again in a new light and couldn't believe that they had fallen for it. And I think sometimes talking about it makes they're able to sort of work through in their own head, how did I fall for this? Because now it seems so obvious. I don't understand, what was I thinking? And Jen McAdam, the Scottish investor, she'd said, listening back to herself when she was promoting it, she's like, I sound like a different person. Like I don't recognise myself when I see that, how I used to talk about this. I can't believe it. So it's doubly difficult because you're so in, and then once the spell's broken, you're so out again that you can't believe you ever fell for it in the first place. So it takes a bit of working through to kind of match the two stories up.
Definitely. And I want to talk to you about your book. So I want to come back to that because I know you've got a book out. But it just so leads to a question I wanted to ask you as well about, and this might be an impossible thing to answer, but obviously having spent a lot of time talking to people who've fallen for scams, what can we do to protect ourselves? So when we go online, and I know these scams operate quite like cults, and they kind of bring you in, but are there things we can look out for that maybe kind of types of messaging or types of posts that can, or questions we can ask could stop ourselves potentially falling for something like this?
There's some things that are very specific. I mean, if you're talking about crypto MLM products, I mean, basically, if you ever see an MLM product that is, I know you would say if you ever see an MLM product, don't go anywhere near it. I'll be more specific. If you ever see an MLM product that's selling crypto, definitely don't go anywhere near it, because it's like the perfect scam MLM product. It's like you don't need to have a garage full of stuff. So you don't need to shift loads of product. It's just a digital asset you've bought, and that keeps going up in value. Like Amway's, cleaning products don't increase in value when they sit in your garage in the way that OneCoin or crypto can claim to. And because it's the MLM scammers that I see now, they love crypto, they love non-fungible tokens, they'll be onto quantum computing next. Any kind of hyped up technology that most people don't understand, but they sort of read about in the newspapers, that is an amazing thing to sell through MLM, because you can just say, this is the future, everyone's talking about it, the New York Times is talking about it, this is your way to get into this. It's all intangible, it's all just, at the moment, it's just, it's numbers on your screen, but this is one day going to turn into something wonderful. So any sort of technology-based product being sold through MLM, I think, is so prone to this kind of scam and incredible growth. And it's partly because the MLM sellers understand that regulators are confused, which gives them enough time to get in, make a load of money, and get out again.
Absolutely.
Had people actually looked... Sorry, go ahead.
No, carry on. I was just going to clarify to people how they could spot an MLM, but just carry on. I'll come back to that.
Oh no, please, no, because that is actually useful for me.
I was going to say, so how often MLMs never say, "Hi, I'm an MLM." If you are offered any opportunity, crypto or otherwise, go to the company website, ask the company website, and if they have things like join a team, join the opportunity, that kind of language, I personally would say don't touch it with a barge pole. That's the kind of thing that signifies an MLM or multi-level marketing scheme. And research published on the Federal Trade Commission website that 99.6% of people, on average, who join an MLM will lose money once business expenses are taken into account. And actually, really interestingly, Jamie and I, we were just talking before we came on here, and you calculated, didn't you, how many people you thought made money in OneCoin? And what was that?
Yes, I did. Let me get that number for you. So basically, roughly 1 million people had put money into OneCoin. And because I had leaked company data, I was able to try to roughly figure out, it's not perfect, but roughly figure out how much money people actually made and how much money people actually lost. And my estimate is that of the 1 million people, only about 50,000 of them, the very top sellers in the pyramid, made a profit from the company, which indeed is 0.5%.
Yeah. So and it's
0.5%, tiny slither at the top.
Yeah, it was just so interesting that independently,
almost the same.
The research, So, and I think it really bears out the fact that most people in MLMs, research shows, do not make money. So if anyone approaches you about an opportunity, ask for an income disclosure statement. They should be able to give you one. Go and look at the website and check that they don't talk these language, like join the team, join the opportunity. And if you are being recruited, look into that person. Don't believe everything they say. If you're in the UK, go on Companies House, look that person up on Companies House. So do your research. Do not just give your money to anybody. And also, if anyone hypes something up or tells you you've got to get in now, if you don't get in now, then you're going to miss it. You haven't got time to go in and think. Also avoid it. Go and do your research. Listen to family and friends.
Urgency. That was it. In OneCoin, they were constantly saying, you've got to buy now, because they had this thing called splits, where the value of the tokens you'd bought that you could turn into coins would double at certain periods. And there was a huge increase in sales when it got near to the split point. But you're promoted, like, you've got to invest in the next, 24 hours. You've got to invest. Warren Buffett doesn't sit there and think, oh my God, I've got to get in the next 24 hours. He'll have teams of people looking over stuff. And he'll take weeks deliberating on things, because Amazon doesn't say you've got to buy shares in our company in the next 24 hours. Otherwise, that's it. You're never going to have the same chance again. And I often think, like, not if it sounds too good to be true, then it is too good to be true. It's never really a good one, because there are so many stories of people investing in Bitcoin, and that sounded too good to be true. And they became millionaires overnight, in the space of weeks. And so that narrative of if it's too good to be true, it probably is, doesn't always work with these hyped up technologies that can grow in value exponentially. And so I try to think of other things that might sort of get to that same point in a different way. And Warren Buffett's a good example. I mean, if someone's offering you sort of 300% returns in a month, why hasn't Warren Buffett bought every single one of those shares or every single one of those packages? Because he has the world's best financial analysts working for him. Why haven't they bought them? Why is it you, ordinary Joe on the street, that has this opportunity? It's ridiculous. He's happy with 10% a year. If he saw there was if any good investor saw a reasonable chance of 300% in a month, which is what OneCoin was offering at times, they'd have all bought them already. You'd never hear about it. And that is hard to accept because you don't want to believe that you're bottom of the pile, but that is the truth in the world of financial investment. And I often think of more... Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say just also thinking about another thing I say to people, where does that money come from? Like if someone's saying to you, be it financial investment, you can have a 300% return, or be it you can sell aloe vera and make, £5,000 a month. Where does that £5,000 come from? Where does 300? Someone's got to lose. There's a finite amount of money. For you to gain something, someone's got to lose it, or someone's got to pay you it. Who's going to pay you it? Who's going to lose it? So if you track that logically, if you're going to have all this money, if it's, like you say, if it's that easy, why isn't Warren Buffett and similar people all over it? But also, where's that money coming from? Like, what loses money for you to gain it?
And totally. And the final thing I say to people is more like looking inside yourself and the emotions you're feeling. Because the number one emotion that drove these irrational investor decisions into OneCoin was FOMO. They were so terrified of missing out. They feared that Bitcoin 2.0 had turned up on their laps. And if they didn't buy now, they would miss the chance to change their lives. Because they'd all read the stories about the dude who bought Bitcoin in 2010 and turned $15 into $1 million. And they all wanted that. And the fear that they were going to miss out on that is what drove them to basically ignore all the red flags. So I always think if you are starting to look enviously at other people who've made loads of money, other people who seem to have got in before you, because the thing about these crypto investments is none of it's really about smart research. You're not people who made a lot of money weren't necessarily diligent or careful or hardworking. They just got in early. And so for a lot of the people that were investing in OneCoin, it was like, get in early, got to get in early. That's the way you make money. And so they were just driven by this sense of injustice that they'd missed out on Bitcoin and finally their chance had come. And FOMO, I think, drives so many irrational investment decisions. And if you feel it, if you think that you're sort of struck down with this weird ailment where you're jealously looking over at people that made money for doing and you want a piece of it and it's not fair, you're not going to make a smart choice. You're being led by your heart and your jealousy. So look out for the signs of FOMO in yourself and stop. Because if it's that good of an opportunity, it will still be there in a month's time. It will still be there in 6 weeks' time. Just relax.
But I think that's brilliant life advice in general, isn't it? How many poor decisions we make in life are connected to that sense of entitlement to injustice, that, I should be having that. And, and I'm people who marry sometimes thinking, I've got to kind of 32, my friends are all married, I should be married. And that sort of sense of like other people having something that you should be doing. And then making the wrong decision because you want it now.
Oh, I personally think FOMO is probably the single most important driver of nearly all of our bad decisions in life, because advertisers play to us. Like every time I see a Smirnoff advert, I'm like, oh, all those people are having a great time at this amazing party. And I'm just sitting here watching TV. So it's not only there, but when it comes to investment, that's when you can really lose it all very quickly. I had a really interesting thing from, I think it was Paul Merson. No, maybe it was a gambler who was saying you can smoke and take drugs and get alcohol problems, but you won't bankrupt yourself with a gambler can lose everything in a night. And it feels a bit like that with investments like this. You can lose everything so quickly that's why that irrational FOMO taking over you can be so damaging. When I watch a Smirnoff advert and get jealous, I'm a bit annoyed for an hour. I'm not going to change my life over it. But when you feel FOMO, when it comes to your money, you can really do yourself in.
And I think that's what made OneCoin particularly dangerous, because MLMs, my opinion on MLMs is they are all dangerous and they lead to financial loss and they lead to emotional damage as well. But the thing about OneCoin in particular is like, it's not like, oh, I'm going to buy a starter kit and I'm going to I have to keep buying to remain active in it. This is, or buy to get a promotion. This is like literally, oh, if you get as much money as you can and put it in tonight, you could double it. And people were taking loans out, weren't they? Borrowing money of their friends and family.
Yeah.
And there was huge amounts of money changing hands that money, it's not even money they could afford to lose. It's money they didn't even have in the first place.
No, they were quitting their jobs, they were selling their cars, they were selling their homes, they were selling their livestock, they were borrowing money off friends, borrowing money off the bank because of FOMO. Because of FOMO. That's how powerful it is.
But I wanted to say one nice story that came from your podcast. So anyone who's listened to it will know that, is it Daniel you went to speak to in, is it Uganda?
Yes.
And Daniel had got his mum, who'd worked for years saving up money to buy a little kind of kiosk in her village. And he and his dad had convinced her to take all that money and put it in OneCoin. And you took Daniel out to the village to talk to the mum. And even then he didn't want to tell his mum because he didn't want her to lose that hope. But so if you listen to the podcast, you do really feel for Daniel. But I have spoken to you, and what has Daniel? Because you stay in touch with Daniel, don't you? And I think it's a really nice story. There's something good coming from it.
Yes, totally. Well, it's the same with Jen McAdam, the woman, the Scottish woman who invested. She's now writing a book about it, and it looks like there's going to be a movie where Kate Winslet is going to play Jen McAdam in a film about all this. So she's speaking to journalists, has completely turned her life around. She's brilliant. So this is a good advertisement to people who are worried about coming forward. And she was, of course she was. She's now the hero of her own. Like, her friends look up to her. She no longer feels like, oh, it's terrible, I'm so embarrassed. Now it's like, yeah, I bloody stood up to these people. I talked out, I spoke out, and now look at me. And Daniel was the same. So Daniel had put his money in. He'd convinced his mum to invest 5,000 euros that she'd saved up for her whole life to buy a maize store in Uganda. And we noticed when we were over there, he was like absolutely tenacious. He had zero fear. He would just go up. We'd talk to OneCoin supporters and promoters over there. And he was like an amazing journalist, but without any training. He was brilliant. And we said, Daniel, you're amazing. You should. And he decided he wanted to actually start exposing crypto scams in Uganda. And he started some YouTube pages, he started a Patreon account, and now he's got like big YouTube channel, he's got branded stuff, he's out there doing videos, and he's making money exposing crypto scams. He even presented a BBC program of his own, BBC radio program of his own about online scams in Uganda. So again, he's turned it around. I know that's never going to be possible for 1 million people, but it is good to know that you can, by speaking out, you can turn these things around.
Definitely. And I think, on a small level, it gives you closure, it gives you a sense of power. And I love the fact that Jen has, because she was so brave, and knowing how much courage it takes to speak out anyway, and the things she shared about bringing her family in and allowing you to play a video where she was arguing with someone trying to tell her that she was being scammed, and the courage I know it must take her to be so vulnerable. So I'm really delighted that she as well is also now getting opportunities.
Going to be a Hollywood star,
yes.
Going to be Hollywood, brilliant. And hopefully actually a Hollywood movie about an MLM scam is going to really help people to... Because I really feel like that's part of it. Like, you can try and educate in schools, you can try and educate with BBC News articles, but actually, if you've got a big movie or a big Netflix series, that's where you reach a whole other group of people, the sort of people often that you really need to hear it.
Well, there's a brilliant, I don't know if you've seen on Becoming a God in Central Florida with, oh my God, I can't think of, I never think of his names offhand, but that's Kirsten Dunst. brilliant series. It looks, I don't know what it's based on, but it reminds me very much of Amway. And then you've got like Schitt's Creek covering a kind of MLM, and Coronation Street covered MLMs. And I think the more
I didn't know that. Oh wow.
Oh yeah. They apparently they had an MLM storyline, and that was seen to be, from what I read about it, quite an accurate one. And I think the more that the mainstream media does it, and they show it in entertainment and things like that, that the more people are aware of it. And I do see today many more sort of Facebook groups and forums where people come and share their experiences.
Definitely.
And the more we speak out about it,
we're smarter. We're getting smarter. We're getting smarter, aren't we? We're definitely wisening up.
Definitely. And that is a way that the internet can do good. Leading us circular back to the start.
The
Jamie,
internet can do good.
So
the internet can do good to help with the problems the internet also created in the first place.
We'll leave that part out of it. I am aware I have taken a lot of your time. I've only got to half the question I wanted to ask you because it's so interesting to talk to you. But thank you so much. You have got a book out, haven't you?
Yes,
at the moment?
The Missing Cryptoqueen. There's the podcast, but the book is of the same title. Available all over. Yeah. Usual places. And
I understand that there are more revelations in the book. So even if you've listened to the podcast, read the book.
Yeah, many more. In fact, the book is now quite a long way ahead of the podcast in terms of our hunt for Dr. Ruja, where we think she is, what we think she did, and certain bits of how the scam really worked. So it's a lot more of a deep dive into it, but it also brings the story right up to speed. Not quite up to speed because she only appeared on the FBI's most wanted list 1 week after the book came out, so I couldn't include that in the book. But the story is still.
You had to do a second print.
Yeah, I know. I couldn't believe it when it happened. I was like, the FBI, she's on their top 10, like next to like organised, like proper hardened criminals, and Dr. Ruja Ignatova, the crypto queen. It was amazing to see that. So, in a way, there is now a sort of an MLM scammer is on the FBI's top 10 most wanted fugitives list. So that has got to be good at getting the word out.
There's a few names I'd like to add to that list as well. But anyway, that's not going to happen. Thank you so much, Jamie. So where can people find like your podcast, your book?
Well, I did post on Twitter. Yeah, I posted on Twitter the other day that if you really want to get an author's attention, don't worry about tweeting or emailing. Write an anonymous review on the Amazon page for their most recent book. So that would be the way to get my attention, because obviously we're obsessed with reading them. But in seriousness, Jamie J. Bartlett on Twitter and on Instagram, but I'm rubbish on Instagram. Jamie J. Bartlett, that's where I post all updates about the story, because like I said, it really is still breaking. So the minute she's caught, you will be hearing about it on my Twitter feed within seconds. So that's the place to keep up to speed. So
go and follow you on Twitter, in other words. And also, if anyone listening has not listened to the Missing Cryptoqueen podcast, I binged it in a weekend. It's brilliant. It's an excellent story, irrespective of it being about MLM. And of course, your book on Amazon and other places.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jamie, for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And it's been for me personally, a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, me too. Thanks. It's great. I speak to a lot of crypto specialists about this story, but I don't speak to many MLM specialists. And I think that's where no crypto people fell for OneCoin. So I don't need to educate them about this, because they all knew it was a scam. It's the MLM people that I really want to read the book and hear the podcast, because they're the ones that are now going to be targeted with all the OneCoin clone companies that are turning up, selling the same rubbish, but with a new name and fancy new branding. So I really hope if those people can hear this, that might just help just a few people from thinking twice before putting their money in.
I hope so. I hope if this helps at least one person to not fall for a scam, then it's been more than worth it. So thank you, Jamie.